Today we are going to be looking at the weekly energy patterns from 20th of July until the 26th of July 2026. If you haven't listened to me yet, my name is AstroViktor. I have been doing astrology for 25 years, and I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss these important videos. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram as well, where I often share some daily updates as well as some articles. But of course, this week is one of the biggest weeks of the century. So the energy patterns that we are seeing right now, we haven't seen them for a very long time. We've seen something similar back in the late 17th century, approximately about a good 250 years ago. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't a basket configuration. Everyone speaks about it, right? The Barbault Basket configuration. So we have to be doing that. I have made videos before, so you should be kind of clued up a little bit, but this week is major, so maybe one video is never enough, right? But on top of that, Mercury is going direct this week on the 23rd. Mercury is immediately making a sextile to Venus. That's going to be the very first aspect Mercury makes after it goes stationary direct. And early next week, we have to be talking about Saturn going retrograde, which is happening on the 27th. But our agenda for today is really about this Barbault Basket, because obviously that's the biggest one, starting actually today. Now, you might have seen many videos before already, because, like I said, this is the most talked about mundane configuration right now, right? So the internet kind of has dubbed it as the Barbault Basket, because 4 major outer planets have aligned perfectly to form kind of like this cradle or basket shape across one half of the zodiacal wheel. So Jupiter is in the sign of Leo on 4 degrees, Neptune is in the sign of Aries on 4 degrees, Uranus is in the sign of Gemini on 4 degrees, and Pluto is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius on 4 degrees as well. One of the biggest configuration of all of this is most likely going to be the Uranus and the Neptune configuration, because they are going to be making 13 sextile in the next 6 years. So of course, this is big. Now, there is a huge buzz around it. And who was André Barbault? I had to be looking up, to be frank. He was a French astrologer living from 1921 to 2019. And he was quite a pioneer of the modern mundane planetary cycles. He created this cyclic index, kind of like a mathematical model that tracks the shifting distances between the outer planets. Because let's be frank, when 3 outer planets trigger your natal chart at the same time, there is nothing bigger than that. That's huge. So when the outer planets cluster tightly together, kind of like in row conjunctions, he noticed that the global stability plummets, such as wars, pandemics, economic crisis situations are happening. But when they start expanding outwards into more of a harmonious kind of geometrical aspect, civilizations enter kind of major periods of reconstruction, technological leaps, and a lot of cultural growth as well at the same time. And that's exactly what I'm expecting. That's exactly something that we have been talking about for the last few years, actually. Now, decades ago, this gentleman calculated this massive cyclic low for 2020. Of course, that was the period of a global pandemic as well. But he also mentioned we would climb out of it, of course. And he specifically named the Saturn-Neptune conjunction as more of a profound kind of turning point for the century. Of course, a conjunction would represent pretty much a new beginning in civilization. Remember, Saturn and Neptune meet approximately every 36 years or so, so it's a bit of a reset. Now, you know, this is a basket configuration which is super difficult to talk about on one hand. And I've seen some posts on different type of Facebook channels and groups that how can we talk about it when it has never happened in our lives? So how would we track it? And yes, to a certain extent, I completely agree with it. But we, as astrologers, understand the planetary archetypes in each signs. So yes, we are kind of like tapping in the dark, but we can still kind of pull, the planetary information together to figure out what to expect with this. Okay, so now, today, Jupiter is making a trine to Neptune. That's going to be the very first aspect. And then immediately, a few hours after, it's making an opposition to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius as well. I think what we need to do with this basket configuration, we need to really kind of look at each element in depth so that we can really understand how it might be playing in our lives. But first up is a fire trine, right? A trine is a 120-degree aspect. And then we've got that polar opposition between Jupiter and Pluto, which is a 180-degree aspect. So all three planets are sitting on 4 degrees. Because Jupiter is the faster moving planet, Jupiter is more of a trigger here. So it's triggering that 3 outer planets. You can think of it as a closing the circuit on those massive amount of slow moving generational energy and kind of grounding it into a very expressive kind of fast acting window. Of course, it's not only going to be Jupiter who is going to be triggering this aspect pattern. Later on, Venus will do the same as well, or Mercury, once it goes into the sign of Leo, in a couple of weeks' time, it's also going to trigger those. But of course, Jupiter is the bigger gun here because that's a social planet. Okay, so Jupiter trines Neptune, right? So Jupiter, we have made I've made a video about it, but let's just summarize a little bit in case you are new to my channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those lovely things so that the channel can grow and I can create more free of charge contents for you. But Jupiter in Leo wants something big, visible, it's creative self-expression, it's leadership. It's kind of like the heart center, really. And then Neptune in Aries kind of gives you that raw, visionary kind of courage to back it up. So it's an ideal time to turn something abstract, like an idea or ideas, into more of an active, kind of like pioneering drive. I think it is a kind of like a creative conviction, really, where visionaries, artists, and leaders, suddenly feel an unshakable faith in a kind of like a brand new direction. Every single aspect, even trines, can come with a pitfall as well. So, and I think one of the pitfalls here could be pure intoxication. Neptune can make any illusions look like kind of like a definite calling, but the fire element, demands action regardless. So that's the pitfall there, right? We have got a vision and then we want to go for it. Talking about visions, I've received a couple of emails saying that the link for the drawing test, the psychosomatic drawing test course that I'm going to be starting on 5th of September, it's not working. So I just want to announce that it has been fixed. So if you want to book your seat, then you can now do it. There was a bit of a technical issue, but it's all fixed now. So go ahead and check it out. Now, we've got the Jupiter and Pluto opposition, right? And again, Jupiter in Leo is, it's all about wanting to be seen and celebrated and compensated as well for a unique brilliance. But Pluto in Aquarius, being retrograde, is an uncompromising power. It's the power of people, really. It's the movement of a social network and kind of like the top-down systematic changes that somehow demands total authenticity. So it somehow really feels like that there is a tug of war between Jupiter and Pluto, of course, between the ego and the ambition and what actually the collective power wants. Oppositions always force a bit of a confrontation. So how do I claim the stage without kind of like alienating others in my life? How can I become egotistical without not being like inconsiderate towards others, or how I'm going to be navigating my life in this outdated power dynamics. So I think let's just talk about Pluto a little bit more. Pluto represents money, wealth, but I think it's important to mention that wealth is not only physical, okay? So therefore, it's not only money or not only kind of like what we own. It, of course, there is also a major part of it. However, it feels like because Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, and we all know that the second house is something to do with self-worth and the value system that we've got. So if the second house represents values, then the opposing house also connected to values as well, which is the eighth. And that's in modern astrology is ruled by Scorpio. So I think it's something meaningful also. Um, and Pluto, I would call the three outer planets, all of them are connected to change. They just bring change into our consciousness differently. And I always describe the outer planets as something that cannot be ruling, for example, a sign. And one of the reasons is because it doesn't make a full circle. So, for example, Pluto is the slowest out of all three outer planets. It takes approximately about 256 years to go around the zodiacal circle. Because we don't live that long, so we are unable to integrate the energy of Pluto into our lives. But now the three outer planets are kind of like coming together. And I'm going to talk about history as well. So stay till the very end, because 250 years ago, the three outer planets had a Earth grand trine going on, approximately about 1772. And it was an Earth grand trine. So the three outer planets kind of like came together. Obviously, we know what went down around that time, but America was born, right? So it really feels like with this basket configuration, something new is about to be born. Okay. But talking about, from a money point of view, it really feels like that this aspect configuration is going to make certain people billionaires or trillionaires and so forth. Of course, we live in a world where money is super important, right? So this is going to be an indication that there's going to be financial changes happening in the world, and people, especially with Jupiter in the sign of Leo, are going to be trying to protect their assets as much as possible. Now, Pluto also represents power as well. So power can be a little bit dark and then can be, kind of like powerful power as well. So, but when power is not used in the right way, right? So what I mean by that is that you are trying to kind of suffocate someone, control someone, dominate someone, manipulate, blackmail, and so forth. Why do I want to do that? Because I want something at all costs, right? And with Jupiter in the sign of Leo, it feels like that I want somehow to be, I want to express myself without type of any type of apology. And yes, Pluto can become ruthless. It doesn't, or sometimes it doesn't care about how much I hurt the other people's feelings and so forth. So Pluto Jupiter cycles could really talk to us about selfishness, basically. And however, the positive manifestation of that, like I said, is about tapping into your personal power and turning your gifts, Jupiter in Leo, which is really trying to magnify your confidence. And then it says that I can't shine as much as I would like to. Maybe I have to be conquering that darkness within myself, Pluto, which is really about those inner demons and little charlatans that are whispering into our ears. But we can conquer it. And then we can showcase our talents to others, which we are going to be able to kind of transform into material assets as well. I also believe, because Uranus is in the picture, which would really talk to us about we have to be kind of like just having these intuitive downloads, and we have to be reframing our mind. We don't have to accept that, I don't know, I only have got $2 in my pocket. How am I going to double that? And then how can I double it again? And so forth. So how can I become more powerful? I think the shadow side is that we shouldn't be too selfish, though, because one of the questions surely here is that how much I allow others to control and dominate me, and how much I allow myself to be sitting in the driving seat of that car. So it's a lot of empowerment that is happening in this chart right now. You can empower others, but also you can get empowered, you can get enlightened by looking around and then seeing that certain people maybe succeed. And I also want to succeed as well. But because Pluto represents a bit of a shadow work, that would talk to you about having to go a bit underworld and then digging up the dirt, having to be able to face our fears, all the trauma that you buried, something that you have swept under the carpet, you have not been ready to kind of work with yet. So now this is getting spotlighted for you because Jupiter is in the sign of Leo, and Leo is kind of like the spotlight, right? So something is coming to the surface here. And therefore, I would say that from today until about the 26th of July, you want to be a little bit kind of like open-minded and then looking at your dreams and looking at what you like, who you meet, for example, and really think about what they want to remind me of. You can think of Pluto as kind of like a shamanic power. So this would really talk to you about trying to find certain type of tools that you can work with to eliminate some of your insecurities, because the second house, which is a Taurian house, right, that talks to us about insecurities. So if the second sign talks to us about insecurities, the eighth sign, which is a Scorpionic Plutonian terrain, are also going to talk to us about insecurities, but these are insecurities that you usually are not aware of. And maybe this is one of the reasons why this drawing test course could be super good for many of you, because the pencil never lies. The pencil is the continuation of your subconscious mind, and that's why you draw your sicknesses, for example, into a picture, or kind of like the immediate future is also in your drawings as well, such as, I don't know, your partner is going to cheat on you, or there's going to be happening, like a crack is going to be happening in my relationships, and so forth. I studied the drawings about 25 years ago, and I just want to share a very quick story because I really got scared of it. And I think I've shared this story many times with my students before. But one of the reasons why I got really scared of it, because I started seeing death in drawings. For example, I clearly remember there was this super cute guy, very intelligent, and then he drew stuff on the father's side, and then he made a hole with a bird in the tree, and then he stabbed the bird with a knife. And I was very certain that it means the death of the father. And so we were talking about it, and then he said to me that he committed suicide. So that knife represented the anger towards the father figure, because the drawing shows you which is the father figure side, which is the mom side, and so forth. So, this is a huge trauma. This is a Plutonian trauma. So these are the traumatic experiences that you might be spotlighting, for example, with Jupiter. But also somehow Jupiter says that optimism and faith can kill our traumatic experiences as well. I would call it that just think of it when you have got a bit of a, like, like a, you get bitten by a mosquito, and then you're going to have, an itchy surface there, and it's going to go a little bit red. But what do you do with it? You want to make sure that it's not going to get infected. So you kind of going to cover it up, or you use certain type of antibiotic or creams on it and stuff like that, right? So these fears are popping up in your life, not because it wants to scare you, but because you have to be able to deal with that. So that's why I often call Pluto as the planet of healing. Okay. And often this is the healing of the soul rather than healing of, for example, your financial situation or stuff like that. This is somehow healing the past, because fourth house, eighth house, and the 12th house are really all connected to your family lineage, to your karmic experiences. And those are the water houses, and water is about healing. We all know that we cannot live without water longer than 4 days, right? So there's a lot of clearance to be done here. And I feel like because Jupiter is part of it, Jupiter is the planet of opportunity. So I think it gives you the opportunity to kind of clear out, or maybe not even clearing out, because how do you do that, right? Maybe it's about processing certain type of traumatic experiences. And because Uranus is part of it, and Uranus is one of the planets that is connected to awakening. So I think once we have, and this makes sense, right? We have got Jupiter trining Neptune, so we've got this huge vision, but straight away it opposes Pluto. So some of our shadow side is kicking in, but then Jupiter tomorrow is going to be making a sextile to Uranus. So that would be a representation of awakening for me. I think many of us have had many awakenings in our life, right? Sometimes this is more just like happening in the mind, and we might not be doing much about it. Okay, but I also believe that without Pluto, awakening kind of like just like happens, but nothing is pushing us to go towards that awakening kind of route. And I think therefore we can be grateful of Pluto being in this configuration. Is it going to be easy? No, it's never easy with Pluto. So I'm not going to tell you something opposite. Okay, so Pluto is, the first step that Pluto does is always destroying. It exposes things first step, and then after it's going to destroy it for you, and then after it's going to help you rebuild it. And because Pluto's energy lasts for about 4 or 5 years, at the beginning it really feels tough. Okay, but 5 years down the line, you're going to look back and you might say, this has been the bestest thing ever that could have happened to me. Okay? So there is a lot of awakening opportunity here. That's how it feels like. Even Pluto can represent something to do with sex industries as well. So because it's the natural ruler or the modern ruler of the eighth house, and the eighth house represents bonds. So it's about the ability to be able to bond with others. Nowadays, I have heard it from so many people that it's just better to be alone, and I don't want to be in a relationship. The relationship just holds me back, and so forth. We also know that in recent years, the divorce rate went up to 71, 72%. I mean, that's crazy. 72 people out of 100 couples get divorced. That's a huge number. So, but I'm also wondering, that often this is down to the question of money, because money does bring a lot of problems into relationship. I mean, do let me know in the chat box below, how do you feel about that? But surely I think the lack of intimacy, money, and communication are some of the biggest factors having to be considered, in a relationship. So hopefully, maybe people are gonna hopefully realize in the next 4 or 5 years, or even 6 years, that relationship or collaborations with others, because Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. So the ultimate goal of Pluto in Aquarius is to bring people together, realizing that we are stronger together than alone. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that, and then in that case, Jupiter in Leo says that we have to be able to put our pride aside as well, and realizing that maybe I don't like this person, but we still benefit from each other, so we can still somehow get together, and not necessarily on a romantic level, right? So what I'm wondering is that, let's say two countries, I don't know, let's say Spain and Portugal hate each other. Just a silly example, okay? So that's not the case. And then, but we realize that we cannot kind of live without each other. So we need each other's help. So we are kind of like connecting to a certain extent. We are even making a bit of a peace, right? But somehow we need each other. So the biggest lesson, I think, with Pluto is that you should never look backwards. You should embrace the change, right? So because that's a total transformation. So with Pluto, and then we have got another planet involved here, right? Neptune, which is also talking to us about release. So let's just leave the past behind once and for all, and let's open the doors for new opportunities. And that is really the message of Jupiter, you know. Of course, we are kind of, like I said at the beginning, we are kind of like just stepping in the dark, right? And we have never experienced this configuration, but it doesn't mean that we cannot maybe share certain type of messages with this planetary configuration. Oh, another big meaning of Pluto is something to do with resources. So especially resources of the earth, something that can make people rich in a way, or something that is very valuable. So, while Taurus, the second sign, kind of says, I don't know, this is my car, this is my house, this is my castle in a way. Okay. And then Pluto comes into the picture, which is the eighth sign, modern ruler, right? It tells you that richness or wealth doesn't only come from material possessions. Pluto often tries to control the uncontrollable, meaning that, there are things happening around us. We are fighting against it when maybe we are too small to fight against it. So Pluto's message is that what if you embrace it? So for example, I mean, it's a very controversial topic, of course, but I was talking to Lada about this the other day when we met, and I told her that I wouldn't be able to cry anymore if someone died, because I have kind of reframed my mind about death. And I think of death as we just have to be celebrating the life of the dead. So I also wrote up my will, and I also told my friends as well, if I die tomorrow, please don't cry. And I pointed at one of my best friends to kind of organize a bit of a gathering, which is about going to be the celebration of my life and, good memories. And I want laughter because, yeah, I mean, I think this is more of a hard shell for me, to be frank, because when my grandmother died in 2000, I could not cry for about 4 hours. And then all of a sudden it was like pouring out of me. Like I couldn't stop crying. And then after, I could never die. I could never cry anymore when someone died. It doesn't mean I don't feel sad, but yeah, so that's how I think, right? So Pluto is the planet of death. That's what I'm trying to kind of like talk about. But and also this is something to do with shared resources. So what I'm trying to say is that, a death is an inevitable thing. We cannot control that. No matter how much money you've got, you are not going to be able to take your money into the grave. Yes, you are going to be able to pass it down to your offspring or, to whoever you want to. But regardless of how much money you've got, death is going to find you. You might be able to prolong it. So I think the message here is that, especially with Jupiter in the sign of Leo, that we are all meant to live a bit better life. We all deserve attention, and we all deserve a bit of a success and applaud and all these beautiful things. But many of us tend to be just sitting at home and crying over the spilled milk, right? So this is where Jupiter, because it's a fiery planet, it tells you that you have to go out. Jupiter in Leo, right? You have to look for the opportunity. You cannot just sit on your laurels waiting for something to happen. Very, very important. Yes, of course, we can mention that Pluto in Aquarius is really about artificial things, and it can represent the change or our change towards fake food and, the fast food industry and all those type of stuff. Yeah, those meanings come into the picture. Of course, the technological advancements, but I have spoken about those before. Today, I want to be focusing a little bit more or try to help you to rewire your brain around these certain planetary alignments rather than being scared of it. Pluto's message is surely embrace the change, be happy about it. And I got hot and cold before when I said that those people who don't welcome such things as AI are going to be kind of like falling into a pitfall. And it's your choice, but can we do much about it? And maybe Pluto in Aquarius, like I said, it's about coming together as humans and then do something on a collective level to kind of stop these changes. But let's just be frank, how much chance do we see that people are going to come together? Unless with Jupiter in Leo, people are able to put their ego aside. And we stop kind of like looking for these validations, and we stop just taking care of our needs, but we start looking at what other people need in their lives as well. And the chances of that is really minimal. So I'm just trying to be realistic with my Mercury in the sign of Capricorn. Okay, so we've got Pluto out of the way, right? So I think of course, I haven't touched much on, on the sign of Aquarius. It's being retrograde as well. But, Pluto in Aquarius could talk to us about that they are trying to control humanity, right? Or it is something that makes people insane, for example. Or it can talk to us about being worried about the future as well. And it can represent a lot of agitated and anxious people also. The positive side of that is that the people are coming together. Like I said, it's a bit of a building up a tribe and kind of like an affinity group and so on. It's about maybe it becomes easier to connect with like-minded people. So therefore, what I'm wondering is, travel industry, visa matters, how are those going to be changing easier, harder, and so forth. But there should be a lot of breakthroughs happening. Anyway, so that's the Plutonian energy. Now, like we said, Jupiter is making a trine. I can see that someone says that people will resist. I just can bring up COVID as an example. People were resisting, and eventually everyone kind of gave in. And it just got pushed down on your throat, basically. They came up with rules such as, okay, you cannot go to work if you are not getting the vaccination. So I had at least 25 friends who said, no vaccine, no vaccine, no vaccine. As soon as the workplace announced, okay, you don't have vaccine, you don't have work. So guess what? Next day they went to get the vaccine. So I don't know whether people will resist that much. We know how politics work. If they want something, they will get it. That's how I see it. So, but hopefully I'm wrong. And I'm really hoping that people will come together and, let's say, stand up against brutality and this like looking down on people, because Pluto-Jupiter opposition is really about looking down on people, especially from that top-notch and then treating you like a slave, a servant, or that you are no one. And I'm really hoping that we're going to come together and then we stop it. Like I said, it feels like that the chances of that is really minimal. Now, we've got Neptune in the picture, right? And Neptune is in the sign of Aries. So Neptune is inspiration. Neptune is that spiritual courage to go after something that you have been dreaming of. Yeah, Neptune represents dance and music industries and shoes and oil and anything that is super creative. It goes under the umbrella of Neptune. So I think one of the message is of Neptune in the sign of Aries is that what has been your dream that you haven't gone after yet? If you had one choice right now to accomplish, what would that be? And maybe some of you will say that, oh, I have always wanted to be an actor or actress. Then what's stopping you to get there? Of course, the danger of Neptune is that we are super unrealistic about things, right? And then we are craving for something or we want something that is kind of like out of our elements. So thank God we've got Saturn in the sign of Aries as well, which is kind of like grounding the vision of Neptune, even though they are not making a conjunction anymore, but they are still in the same sign. Neptune is it's kind of like the escapism. It's like flowing a little bit. So I think that's a trap here. Because if we don't have a clear vision, we just kind of like in a flowy state. And therefore, I don't know, I'm drinking or, I'm dreaming of something or I'm dreaming about something, but I don't know how to take action about it. Then it's kind of like a way of escapism, right? So there could be a trap there. So therefore, I think the to-do list, or actually you need to have a to-do list with Neptune in Aries, so that that vision that you've got is not going to kind of be just burned away or flushed down on the toilet, but you have got a guide. You've got a step-by-step guide to follow so that you can get there, right? With Neptune often, which is the planet of disappearance. So often we just procrastinate. Often we just kind of want to disappear. We kind of want to be invisible. But that doesn't work with Aries because Aries wants to be number one. So it's about dreaming that you can be the best at something. So also Neptune is called to be the planet of unconditional love. Now I've got my opinion about that, okay? So I don't believe in unconditional love. You can crucify me for it. Um, I think there is only one type of unconditional love, and that's towards your little baby. But maybe only in the first couple of years or first 5 years of their lives, because after you are going to be expecting them to act in certain ways. You are going to be expecting them to bring good grades home and so forth. And that's not really unconditional anymore, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't like this word for Neptune, unconditional love, because accepting someone the way they are is super difficult, in my opinion. But maybe again, I'm wrong. But that's how I experience it. I've never been accepted for truly for who I am. But the question that pops up with Neptune, can you accept yourself the way you are? Like 100%. However, the keyword that I like associating with Neptune is forgiveness, because everyone makes mistakes and we need to be able to forgive them. So, and I think Neptune is in the sign of Aries that you don't have to be apologizing for existing. You have to be accepting in a way that you have chosen a karma for yourself, but it's also your decision to make it better or to kind of leave it the way it is. Now, with Neptune, often opportunities are actually popping up in our lives, but it's nicely packaged. And then, like, let's say you are signing up for a promotion and then you are super excited. Aries tends to get excited and then it tends to rush towards that opportunity. but because it's beautifully packaged. But when you open the box, unfortunately, that's why I call Neptune as a rotten apple archetype, because when you bite, like the Cinderella story, right? When you bite into that apple, unfortunately, you're going to see maggots there and so forth. So with Neptune, we should never believe what we see. We just need to be gathering more and more information. Okay. So the Neptunian challenges are we escape into addictions and substance abuse and playing the role of the victim. This is something I like talking about, the drama triangle, but I'm not going to be doing that now in depth because this video is going to be mega long then. But instead of having that victim mindset, and that's a downfall of Neptune in the sign of Aries, because Neptune in the sign of Aries is like you are used as a what was the word I'm looking for? You know, when, let's say when there is a war, and then they are sending these unskilled people on the front line to get shot. So it protects kind of like the big people behind, right? So being playing the role of the victim is one of the major, the most dangerous challenges of Neptune in the sign of Aries. So the teaching there is that we need to get out of this victim mindset. We need to get inspired. We need to be working with our dreams, visions, rather than running into escapism, drugs, spiritual bypassing, and all this type of stuff. Okay? Because it's in the sign of Aries. Remember, Aries is violent. Aries is it's fighting for a worthy cause. Aries goes, it wants to be number one. Aries is also a very egotistical sign because it only kind of look, and I'm not talking about you as an Aries, I'm talking about the archetype. Okay, so that's very different because I have experienced some comments recently that, oh, I'm an Aries and I'm not like that. We are talking about the archetype, the pure archetype. No one has a pure Aries archetype. You would have a pure Aries archetype if all 10 planets would be in the sign of Aries. Okay, and all your angles would be in the sign of Aries as well, which is not going to happen. So, what was I going to say? But Aries, yeah, so it's often just for themselves. And again, we have spoken about that trap before as well, that we are trying to make our lives better, but with Pluto opposing Jupiter, kind of can talk to us about that we are ignoring what other people needs around us. Right? Aries is also a very sexual sign, so I find it interesting because Pluto is one of the planets that connects to sexuality, and then the sign Aries is also very connected to sexuality. So I believe this is going to be a description of a gender movement or the legislations around that and so forth. And we might be seeing more and more demonstrations for this gender fluid kind of culture. Let's see how that goes. But with Neptune in the sign of Aries, I think it's also a huge spiritual awakening. Um, Surely, because it is trying to awaken your visions within you. It is trying to get you up and make it happen. Right? So now that's the very first day. So Jupiter trines Neptune, it's a big vision. And then Jupiter makes an opposition to Pluto. So tomorrow we have got Jupiter sextiles Uranus. So another kind of nice energy there. So Uranus in Gemini, I made several videos. I'm just going to give you a bit of a short description on that, but that's a lot of flashes of insight. It's kind of penetrating into your mind. It will talk to you about radical technological shifts when it comes to driving, public transport, the way we speak and process information, social media, and so forth. But what this constellation does, that it bridges the gap between your heart-centered ambition, and that's Leo, and kind of like the cutting edge, like delivery system. So I am imagining a lot of upgrades in delivery, So if you've got a creative piece of work, or you've got this vision and you have got a way of delivering it, this might be telling you, what if I upgraded that way of delivery? Because it is somehow not reaching the audience, right? Just as an example. But it also feels like that it's like a bit of an aha moment, because the opposition to Pluto forced you to confront this old like bottleneck there. And then now we've got this sextile, which is an unexpected workaround, an unexpected opportunity. And what's important here is that the solution won't come from pushing harder actually against that old wall. It comes from a literal shift in perspective. Because remember that Pluto is the planet of change. And what I said about Pluto was that you should never look backwards. So if you are trying to look backwards, you're trying to kind of hold on to the past, hold on to very strongly to that wall that you have got right in front of you, because that's an opposition, it's a bottleneck. You know what? Then the Jupiter, Uranus, or Jupiter and Neptune kind of energy will not work. Okay? So therefore, this is about looking outside of the box and then looking for alternative ways of generating income, wherever it is in your chart, generating income or dealing with your family members. So you would need to be looking at where it is in your natal chart. One of the examples that I would like to give you on a personal level, I've got Uranus going through my fourth house, and I've been trying to sell my villa and my apartment as well. Um, and I started looking outside of the box, because it looks like the agents are not doing a great job. So I started taking hands into my, like I stated, I started taking things into my hand, and maybe, I'm going to announce it on YouTube or stuff like that. So try something new, because that could be bringing you the opportunity. So let's go a little bit deeper with Uranus, right? Uranus is a shock. It's a shock in the system. And it's in the sign of Gemini, so it's a shocking change that is happening in the way of learning, teaching, education, not publishing, more to do with the writing, the way we're communicating. Gemini is like information, right? And Uranus brings a lot of excitement. So it's an exciting piece of news. It's an exciting collaboration opportunity, for example. Uranus is about innovation and moving forward. So, AI and all those type of innovative type of energy patterns obviously are described with Uranus in the sign of Gemini. But what it really says is that you have to be having a major reset in your brain, right? So the way you prepare your podcast is, if it's not working, then we have to be kind of like upgrading something there. It's somehow about automation. It's somehow about a radical change. Wherever Uranus is, of course, in your chart, it's trying to shake up things. So if it's in your seventh house, because you are a Sagittarius rising sign, it's about bringing the excitement back into your relationships, for example. I think because Gemini is about flexibility, like all the mutable signs. And because Uranus is kind of like, one thing is changing today, guess what? A week later, things are going to be changing completely again. So therefore, it is really about being open-minded. It is about the willingness to think differently. It's also about what you have known used to be kind of like a fact for you, but it's not a fact anymore, because a week later, unfortunately, that fact is going to be shattered, because, I don't know, a new astrological piece of information is going to be discovered, and what you used to believe, unfortunately, it's not how it works anymore. So that's the open-mindedness. we have got two outer planets involved here, which both represent intuition, Uranus and Neptune. Neptune is a little bit more to do with inner knowing, at least in my opinion, and Uranus is kind of like the information that you download, kind of like by a lightning bolt, kind of it hits you on the head, let's say a book, and then, all of a sudden you have got that great knowledge in your hands. Okay. The danger with Neptune that it's like constant. It's like you're under a waterfall. Okay, and then it comes to you really like heavy. Neptune, which represents oceans, water is one of the most dangerous elements. So that's why often we want to be running away from our spiritual gifts, for example, with Neptune, because we don't know how to deal with it. It comes in a huge amount. At least with Uranus, it comes a little bit comes shockingly fast, but it's not overloading you immediately. But anyway, it's a highly intuitive, it's kind of like a high speed type of energy altogether. So it really feels like that many people will, for example, just decide that I don't want to stay here. And then you get the itch to relocate. Or maybe it's a kind of like a spiritual journey. Maybe this is the rise of spirituality. This is the rise of kind of like the healing industry. It's the realization that we have to be able to heal the mind before we can heal the physical body. So I believe Neptune, which represents anything to do with such as the drawing test that I'm going to be doing, but anything to do with psychoanalytic stuff or hypnotherapies and all those type of stuff, maybe this is the rise of that. Of course, we know that Uranus represents any type of aliens and stuff like that. So, it's an interesting word because alien means alienated as well, right? So, yes, we can feel like that we are kind of like we have been born into the wrong century. And I cannot cope with all these changes and so forth, right? Because things are speeding up here. Surely in 3-4 years' time, we are not going to recognize the world. Maybe we are going to love that I have got, I don't know, iPhone 17 or whatever the latest version is right now. Oh, iPhone 17, that was such a shitty phone. Because we're going to have iPhone 25 and that's going to be super smart. So somehow there's a huge change there. But this could indicate, kind of like a hidden piece of information exposed on aliens, and all these type of informations could kind of come into the picture. Right now, of course, Jupiter is the most important part because that brings the planetary energies together. And on the 25th, we've got Neptune sextiling Pluto, but I have spoken about the planets separately. So I'm not going to be talking about them again. So that's kind of like this basket configuration that is happening right now. It's an exciting time. Now we've got a couple of other aspects that are happening right now, but let me see if you guys have got any questions. I can see some comments are coming through. I am so excited. I don't know why, but I am. I have 4 degree of Jupiter and Capricorn, and my wheel of fortune is 4 degree of Sagittarius with a Pisces rising sign. Yeah, so this configuration is super active, especially if you have got planets between 3 to 5 degree. Others might be saying, look at it from 0 to 7. I don't know if I agree with that. I would go up to 5 degree, and I'm going to tell you why. Because this configuration is going to be the most potent this month, okay? But it's going to last for about 4 years. Well, at least 3 years, until about 2029 September. Strongly. However, like I mentioned before, Uranus and Neptune are going to be meeting up 13 times or so in the next 6 years. So really, this configuration lasts for almost half a decade. but the meeting points are always going to be happening on different degrees. So the next degree activation, which is next year, is going to be 7, 8 degree. So this year, really, those people are active who have got planets on 3 to 5 degree, really. Okay, or that's my intake on that. However, if you've got planets on 7, 8 degree, this year is a preparation, and the big showdown should be happening next year. Is the big showdown going to be as big as, for example, for the 4 degree? Maybe not so much, because Jupiter will not be in the sign of Leo anymore, but it is still a huge change in your life. So having Jupiter on 4 degree, you know, whatever that Jupiter rules, whatever house position it is. And if you need guidance, guys, with trying to read this together, then maybe you want to go ahead and then book a reading with me. Sagittarius rising, Virgo sun, hi, Lady Virgo. Well, your name gives it away that you are having Virgo happening in your chart. I really think people should talk more about trines in their less positive light. Victor is one of the only realists about this stuff. Yeah, let me just mention something about trines. I think years ago I made a video about fake trines and good trines. And I believe I made it with Sweaty. I made up these words, okay, fake trines. But trines are not equally good, okay? And some trines are way better and some trines are not so good. It depends on your, sorry, my doggy. She's bugging me because she wants to come up. And say hi, say hi. So it really depends on the essential dignity. So for example, if I've got a Jupiter and Venus trine, okay? And let's say that Jupiter is maybe in Jupiter is in Capricorn and then Venus in Virgo. Okay, so I will be looking at the essential dignity table. How does Jupiter feel about Venus in the sign of Virgo? Not too well. Okay, so even if this is a trine, or how Venus feels about Jupiter, Venus actually doesn't feel too bad about Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn. Why? Because Venus can have essential dignities in Capricorn. So this is a bit of an like an advanced concept, okay? But not every single trine acts like a trine. Some trines are going to be acting as a square, actually. Why? Because trine is somewhere midway of a square and an opposition, okay? So anyway, and on top of that, I don't believe anymore in good aspects and bad aspects. It really depends on you whether you use them well or not. That's how I tend to be looking at it. So someone has got 5 planets on 4 degree. That's huge change, major change. You know, 5 planetary energies. It's a huge one. A practical tip: focus on the one that is potentially the ruler of your rising sign or the ruler of an angle. That's going to be the most visible in your life. Because what really happens here is having 5 planets on 4 degree is a little bit of a planetary noise, okay? And it's going to be very difficult to kind of, which one to listen to. Listen to the one that is, for example, your chart ruler or angle ruler, or maybe the final dispositor of your chart, or the most aspected planet, for example, because I don't know, Venus is sitting on 5 degree or 4 degree, and then Venus has got 6 aspects in the chart. Or focus on the planet that is angular, okay? Because the angular planets are always showing up in your life. So just a quick practical tip there. Awakening, I agree, is not easy, and sometimes we have got awakenings when we don't even understand in that moment that's an awakening. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to process. So surely it's not easy. So I have Neptune 6 degree on my ascendant, Pluto 5, 11th house. So maybe Pluto is more important. Neptune is going to be important next year. I think it happens because people don't marry their soulmates. They compromise from the beginning on red flags and don't discuss how they see their life together. Yes, but is there really a relationship that comes without red flags? I think what also happens nowadays is that many people decide not to get married because we are less tolerant as well. And we don't want to be accepting the red flags because somehow we are always like Neptune. Okay, that's a great one. Neptune is the grass is greener on the other side type of planet. That's why Neptune often brings us cheatings, for example, because we think it's going to be better. It's going to be a better workplace. It's going to be a better lover. It's going to be a better financial opportunity and so forth. And guess what? Like I said before, when you open the box, you realize that, oh my days, this is even worse than the previous one was. Okay? So just be mindful about it. That's why we have to raise our vibrations. Good morning. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, please press like and subscribe and share. That always really much help. Okay, so let's just move on. Hi, Sandy Psychic Medium from Canada. So should we apply? Oh, what have I done? Okay, should we apply it to our progress chart also? Absolutely, look at your progress chart, solar return chart, as well as your solar arc chart. I would surely do that. Now let's move on because we've got a couple of other aspects to talk about that is happening this week. On the 23rd, we've got actually two. Sun is in Leo and then squaring Chiron in the sign of Taurus. So the sun moves into, it's a grand entrance, right? Because the sun moves into its home sign on the 22nd of July. And then immediately the very first aspect it's going to be making is a square to Chiron, which is still sitting on 0 degree of Taurus. Now, we spoke about Chiron. I think altogether I made a 6-hour video for you guys with Chiron. So I'm just going to be brief here. And I also believe that this is actually important because we're going to have a lunation coming up on the 29th. And that's a big one. That's a Sun-Jupiter conjunction opposing Pluto and Juno in Aquarius. So that's going to be an interesting lunation. But Chiron in Taurus is triggering your deep-seated kind of vulnerabilities, right? Especially around worth and money and stability and material security, or simply the fear of not having or not being enough. And then Sun in Leo is, about attention and creativity and validation and generosity and it's the freedom to take up space kind of proudly as well. Sun in Leo always operates from this pure, heart-centered kind of confidence. So this is about you having to deal with your confidence issues. You having to be looking at, again, why you are just waiting for an opportunity to come around instead of kind of like going out there. And with Chiron in Taurus, we always often say, oh, because we need money for it. I had this discussion with a good friend of mine, so lazy, by the way, a Taurus person. I'm not saying that every Taurus is lazy, but this friend of mine is Taurus and very lazy. I've been telling him for a year, why don't you do TikTok videos about teaching Arabic and English and so forth? People potentially would like that. Yeah, but I've got anxiety, all the excuses that you can imagine. So this is the aspect which wants to awaken you in a way that, you know what, you have to be kind of like calming down those voices in your head. You have got the talent, Taurus, Leo. You've got the abilities, the capabilities. You've got the voice for it. You're just going to have to start doing it. And Sun in Leo is a cosmic spotlight. So it's an exposure. And many of you might have got this imposter syndrome, right? This imposter complex. Because if I'm stepping out into the spotlight, what if someone is going to judge me because the way I look, according to my body? Or what if it's not the greatest project? What if I'm afraid to step into a leadership role or showcase my talent because, oh, I'm going to be hit by a stage fright or material anxiety? It's a voice in your head. It says, do I actually have the talent? Do I have got the resources? Do I feel secure about showing myself? Right? Or we're just doing these big talks, but no action behind it, right? And because Taurus represents our safety and possessions, it comes together with an ego friction. So it's like an overcompensating trap. So it's like you wanting to buy validation, or you are trying to overglorify your status, or you are trying to stay anchored in any unfulfilling situations just because you are kind of like panicking about survival or resources. So, and this is where this full moon is going to come into the picture, which is really going to be about reality check. But more on the full moon for my Patreons, and that's going to be broken into 12 signs as well. I think Sun in Leo is about radiance, and then Chiron is really scared to be spotlit. So I think the square is forcing you to step onto a stage with completely accepting your vulnerabilities. Let's just be on the stage, and I don't know, I'm very vulnerable about my nipples, for example. I feel vulnerable about them because due to a huge weight loss, my skin never kind of shrink back. So my nipples are not at the right place. Unfortunately, they are more almost in the middle of my belly. Well, I'm being dramatic, Sun in Leo, right? But it's not at the right place. And maybe I should be just taking off my t-shirt and then be proud about it. That's why I don't like going to the beach, even though my body is relatively okay, but I hate my nipples and a little bit of a skin on my chest. Maybe if you saw it, you would say, oh, I don't see any issue with it. But, Chiron is kind of like making it visible for your eyes. Okay. So that's exactly what happens. Others might not notice it. There is this big lady, Apple Sauce, whatever. She's a kind of like a cook, and she swears on her channels and wash your effing hands. I like watching her. Anyway, and then she talks about being super heavy, but she still goes in her swimsuit with her kids to the beach. And she says, listen, no one watches you, no one looks at you. Everyone is busy taking care of their kids, everyone is busy enjoying the sunshine and so forth. And if you are trying to hide your body, then because you are, I don't know, putting on 5 scarves on the beach because, I don't know, you don't want your neck to be seen, more people are going to notice that something is wrong there. So this is the aspect which tells you that you need to have the confidence. Okay. Now, on the 23rd, we also have got Mercury stationing direct. And I'm guessing everyone is super happy about it, right? So Mercury is going stationary direct. I mean, I think we have, I think, we are all tired of Mercury retrograde. But remember that Mercury retrograde is not necessarily about who now it's going direct, so I can go and then sign documents and all these type of things. Okay, this is more about what went down 11 years ago. 11 months ago, and then now the resolution could be coming into your life, and then somehow you can start moving forward, right? But let's just talk a little bit more about this Mercury uh, retrograde. So Mercury, or stationary direct. So Mercury went retrograde at the end of June. If you remember, to be precise, it happened on the 29th of June. And this time around, the entire Mercury retrograde happened in the sign of Cancer. This year is pretty special from Mercury retrograde period point of view. What Mercury does that every couple of years it goes retrograde in one sign, but it finishes its retrograde in another. Okay, but this year the entire Mercury retrograde period is happening in water signs. Okay, so meaning that it's water, so it's all about an emotional reality check, really. That's what Mercury would like us to do. So you have done the emotional, hopefully you have sorted out certain type of communications with your family members or with people that you live together with. And now you are meant to be actually moving forward with a certain type of emotional clarity. So Mercury is communication, travel, technology, a certain type of business negotiations. Mercury even represents decision makings as well. And so now we meant to be moving forward gradually, clarifying certain type of connections, whatever house it is falling into, of course. Something is going to evolve, okay? Something is going to start moving forward in your life. So just very briefly, I wanted to talk about that. But the very first aspect Mercury is making is a sextile to Venus in the sign of Virgo. And that is happening on 24th. And Mercury is disposing Venus because Venus is in a Mercury ruled sign, and we still have got the South Node there as well. So, what it really tells us is that Venus doesn't just sit there kind of empty handed. Mercury is in Cancer, which is obviously traditionally ruled by the moon, but Venus finds her joy and comfort kind of like, more comfort in that supportive, like nurturing waters of Cancer. And you can think of it as kind of like a mutual reception via house, okay? So Venus in Virgo wants to analyze, it wants to clean, enjoys organizing, enjoys making things perfect. It is trying to extract the useful data from the past because the South Node is there as well, while kind of like sweeping away old toxic habits or like these overcritical, self-sabotaging behaviors and patterns. While Mercury in Cancer is kind of giving the medicine here that Venus needs. And that's an emotionally safe environment, that intuitive intelligence, that deep psychological understanding. And while Mercury was retrograde, you had to be reviewing why you are super critical when it comes to your love life or why you are doing a certain type of financial habits and so forth. So I think this Mercury retrograde wanted us to rewrite our inner critique, right? Because Venus was combined with the South Node, which I made a video about before. And that's a bit of a severe perfectionism type of archetype, or being super anxious about money, or feeling that you are never kind of clean enough, or you're never doing things right, or you are not useful, and so forth. And this is, it feels like, because Mercury is still on stationary degree, making a sextile to Venus. To be precise, Venus is making a sextile to Mercury. So this is a bit of a clarity point around that. This feels like that the clarity that comes to you is getting anchored into a system. You're gonna start seeing the patterns basically. So maybe you are ready to get out of a relationship loop, for example, or you are ready to stop overanalyzing your connections, or you are ready to stop fixing situations in your life. Sometimes that Venus in Virgo does it keeping tabs with South Node, especially on old relational debts. So this sextile gives you the opportunity to do this administrative cleanup. It is helping you to feel the emotional truth of a situation better and potentially instantly as well. Mercury in Cancer is really about the memories, going down on the memories. So it's about turning the memories in the past kind of like into a masterpiece. So therefore, it's brilliant for writing, editing, crafting, organizing, anything that carries that deep personal or emotional meaning to you. So these are the aspects. This week, I did not look at I didn't look at asteroids for you because I knew that this video was going to be long. But tomorrow, I would like to break down, maybe tomorrow, yes, I would like to break down this aspect configuration for all 12 signs as well, this basket configuration, so that I can give some hints and tips in 5 minutes to each rising sign how this is going to play out. So if you are interested in that, then keep an eye on that video. Are you Astro Predictor? I don't know what that is. I'm AstroViktor. You can see my name on the screen as well. When is the shadow period of the retrograde over? So the shadow period is going to finish at the beginning of August, around 5th of August. Guys, then we got to the end of it. So I will see you tomorrow. I'll be live, I think, around 4 p.m., I believe, or maybe 3 p.m. Budapest, Hungary time, so that I can give you a 5-minute overview for all 12 signs of how this basket configuration will be impacting you. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those lovely things. And see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.